Hello, everybody. Thanks for joining. Let me make sure I'm recording. That's always helpful. I am. Awesome. This is Whit and Sarah. I am the CEO of Hill Country Tech Guys, and Sarah is my COO. We are in our, what is this, our 7th or 8th webinar now? I lost track.
Oh, we've got to be. Let's see. We started in. Nope, I'm not going to be able to tell you. We'll say
A
8.
lot.
That sounds.
We got a lot.
Sounds like a solid number.
Well, but the cool thing is you can go here and you'll see our past webinars as we get them uploaded, and we're trying to keep the content flowing there. New content coming. Jared, our director of security, is going to start a series on security and stuff, different blogs and his kind of writing, and just trying to spread the knowledge, information, trying to educate as many people as we can on what it should look like and how this should go down. This week we have Jeremy Bigler and Brian Baker with Otava, and we're going to go through the cloud and talk about, we've already in some of our other webinars, we talked about different levels of going to the cloud and what that looks like and transformation. And we know with everybody trying to figure out, this whole work from home thing, and are they going to have an office anymore and all that. It's just like a big topic, right? Everybody's trying to figure it out. And, these guys, this is what they do all day long, right? They're all about digital transformation and migration to data center, and some of the best vendors I know. So rather than me try to come up with content, I knew they would have some awesome content, and lo and behold, they do. So they brought it here today.
Yep, let me do some housekeeping real quick and remind you that this is recorded. So if there's anything that you don't want to be said, don't put it down in one of the questions or tell me in the questions that you do not want that to be said out loud, because they are recorded and they are uploaded into our blog sites for others to be seeing and viewing. In addition to that, if you have any questions, you can answer both in the chat. In the chat, you'll notice that you can talk to all the panelists or say something that might be added in there, or you can just do a question. If we do not get to your question, we will follow up after this with whatever we can.
Yeah, but we do like having this be conversation style. So if you want to interrupt, we love it, because this is way more fun when we're just talking about it instead of talking at you. So yeah. Anyway, so let's get going here. What do we have? This is our first slide. Come on, go. There we go.
All right, Whit, thank you. Great handoff there. Appreciate the invitation today. Looking forward to talking a little bit really about a couple things with cloud, just to sort of kick it off. First and foremost, what types of cloud services or options exist today? How do we as consumers consume, or can we consume those services? What are some of the use cases, right? If I have this type of a use case, what should I do? If I have that type of a use case, what should I do? And then last but not least, right, something I'm sure all of us have been struggling with a bit is I've got now locations I can't get a whole lot of people to every day like I used to. How do I really extend those services that my employees, my third-party contractors or business partners, et cetera, used to rely on me for? How do I extend safe, secure, and appropriate access out to those folks that may be working from home or another location that isn't in my environment? So hopefully we'll cover all 4 of those. I will echo what Whit said very elegantly. Jump in and ask questions, right? Let's have an open conversation here. Let's talk about your use cases. Let's talk about your issues, your challenges, some of the things that are keeping you up at night, and maybe some go-forward directions that you guys can leverage to help empower your organizations.
And this goes for our Hill Country guys too. You guys that are here listening, trying to learn about all this stuff, please bring your questions. If your customers have brought questions to you, this is the time. I can't think of a better one. So yeah, cool.
All right, so let's open it up with really types of cloud services, right? If I talk to 20 people, I hear I'm in the cloud probably from 21 of those 20 people. But what does that really mean, right? And there's a couple different types of cloud services, everything from, hey, I use Dropbox, hey, I use iTunes, hey, I use, X or Y or Z platform, to I've got my entire infrastructure somewhere else's computer, somewhere else, and I just consume it as a service, right? And there's no wrong answer in that spectrum, but it's a pretty big spectrum. So how does that break down into something that we can sort of rationalize and make sense with? So the first thing, I'd be remiss in saying there's a lot of folks out there that still have services on-prem, right? I still have a server closet. I still got boxes somewhere though that is a valid approach. One of the things, and really why we see the move or the push or all of the hype around transformation, though, is organizations who want to get out of that business, right? They want to get out of the buy, build, own, operate business. They want to get stuff out of their environment. They want to get stuff off their balance sheet. They want to get headcount maybe redirected to more important things as opposed to keeping the lights green and not red. But that's really, that segment still exists today, and that is our on-premise segment here on the left, right? The next logical step, as you will recall from a number of years ago, was the move to infrastructure as a service, right? Take my server out of my closet, put it up in the cloud, right? That cloud could be AWS, it could be Azure, it could be a boutique hosting company like Ottava, it could be any number of folks out there today that offer similar services, right? But the bottom line is that server is no longer in my building.
But
right, and that's
technically it's a server somewhere that's somewhere else. It's like, but it's just not in your environment.
Correct. Yep. And what that's done is that's given us as consumers the ability to outsource some of the responsibility for that environment, right? I outsource my networking. Now the service provider handles the networking in that data center. The service provider handles the storage in that data center. The service provider handles the physical boxes that those services are located on, right? And that service provider handles the virtualization, right? Microsoft, open source, VMware, whatever that virtualization is. But we as a consumer still manage our data. We still manage our applications. We still manage the information we're creating, and we still manage the architecture that makes our business processes work, right? If I'm using Salesforce, if I'm using Salesforce is a bad example, but if I'm using a CRM platform or a business management platform or something else that's installed on those virtual servers, I still own and operate that platform.
So for instance, like QuickBooks Desktop, that it could still be on that version, and it would run off of it. And how people would interact with it is still like a remote, they would be remotely logging into the servers and working just like you would be doing if it was in your infrastructure. Is that correct?
100%. Yep.
It's like offloading the box.
Yeah.
As the customers think of it, the box has been offloaded. You don't worry about the box anymore. You just worry about the rest. So that delivery side of everything's taken care of.
Yeah. Okay.
100%. Next up is platform as a service. Platform as a service isn't quite as prevalent, right, as infrastructure or software as a service. All y'all are probably very familiar with that. But platform as a service really is more around, I want to consume an environment, and I only want to put my data into that environment, right? I want to consume SQL as a service, for example, from Microsoft Azure. I don't care about all of the stuff that makes that stuff work. I just have a database or a couple tables, and I want them to live somewhere else, and I want to get the benefit of using that service. And that was the forerunner to truly software as a service, right? Software as a service is, hey, I go to Salesforce, I log into a website, all my data is there. That's good for me. I like that approach. I manage nothing, and I just use the service, right? There's a bunch of software as a service platforms out there. A lot of organizations are moving towards software as a service. In fact, a recent study by IDC points to about a 70 to 80% adoption in SMB and mid-market for software as a service only environments, right? As more and more apps move to a software platform. So many organizations that we talk to are using a combination of a number of these, right? It's not a wholesale move or lift or shift to one, but it's understanding what makes the most sense for the business and then picking the right tool or the right solution for that workload or that use case. And that's really something that Whit, Sarah, and their team can help drive the thought leadership for is let's look at the application architecture. Let's figure out what the best place for that application architecture may be.
And a lot of times it's a migration, right? And you kind of work your way from left to right. You have this existing infrastructure, you have this investment, so you typically can't just throw it in the trash. So you look at what workloads can you move, what workloads are movable, or we hate our XYZ application. And next time you go look for one that is delivered as software as a service or as a platform or service, however you look at it, right? So you just, every one of those change events, you kind of have to reevaluate where you can be and where you want to be. So.
This platform as a service, though, I think is really interesting because I don't feel like a lot of people understand, like they get that, okay, I have a server here and I can go put it in the cloud somewhere, right? But this platform as a service is basically you're just utilizing the space that you utilize to get what you need to have done, right? And I can have whatever applications I have in there, even if they're not offered as a cloud application. So if I have desktop, QuickBooks Desktop is a good example because everybody knows that, is familiar with that one. But I can put that in this platform as a service and only consume the space that I need to consume, and everything's handled and maintained. I feel like it's one that a lot of people don't fully realize that is available.
Yeah, it's actually my least favorite one to go tearing into one, because it has the least ability to integrate into the customer's environment, because you're basically running in a shared infrastructure with just your one application on there. We're seeing a lot of EMRs and dental practices use platform as a service to be like, we'll host your data for $10 a user. They dump it in platform as a service. So what the end user ends up with is a shared environment with double the logins and inability to integrate to something else, integrate to whatever. And these integrations in these fields are growing, but a lot of people are stuck because their platform as a service doesn't want to allow an integration, because that would mean you could integrate to everything on that platform as a service, because they don't have the true multi-tenant thing figured out. So
that's a good thing to bring up, that this is something that you talked about a few webinars ago about when we talked about moving to the cloud as something that would create more flexibility in companies for stability. And you said, watch out for these vendors that are not true software as a service, but actually that they're actually they're just a platform on the service, right? Is what you would.
Yeah, I mean, we have a huge group that we've taken on right now that we're helping them try to. Their workflow was literally broken up because of this platform as a service, because the double logins, but the lack of integration they could have if they were maybe as a software as a service, or as they had their own infrastructure. So it's got to be something thought about. You just can't plug and play. So anyway, yeah. Cool.
And that is a critical consideration, right? When we think about the different models of consumption here based on an application or based on a business process, is the dependencies in those applications, right? What has to talk to what has to integrate to what, and then is my go forward direction going to support that? Is it going to make my business more complex and more unwieldy, or is it going to help it be more efficient, more flexible, more agile?
Yeah, a lot of people think I've moved everything to cloud and my IT is going to be easier. Oh man, that can go like 1,000 different ways, right? Because all we've done when we do that is separate us from our data. And now you got data over here. Now we have to worry about connectivity to that data. And now we have unknown new vendors that need to be managed. Connectivity needs to be thought about. Security needs to be thought about. Now, I'm not saying it's better or worse. It's just something you have to think about. You have to really realize that whole flow of data and what it's going to take to make it work right. I mean, I love moving stuff to the cloud. Don't get me wrong. It's better in a lot of ways, but you got to think about all the variables. So yeah, cool.
Let's move on to the next slide. So one of the things that we talk about, right? We talked about the types of cloud, but how do we consume those types? And this is really centric on infrastructure as a service, right? Because infrastructure as a service has a few different models for consumption. Software is easy, right? I sign up for a software as a service account and I can log into a website wherever I happen to be, and I'm consuming that service. So there's not really a whole lot of different options there. But when it comes time to actually talk hosting of our virtual machines or applications, I can host those in a couple different ways, right? We talked about the on-premise environment. I can do a private cloud on-premise. And a lot of folks that we know have that today, right? I own, operate, and manage my own private cloud. I still get some of the benefits of cloud, but I still own, manage, and maintain that infrastructure, that hardware, that network, that security. A lot of organizations are now doing a wholesale shift to public cloud. Now, when I say public cloud, I don't just mean the Azures and the AWSs, right? I mean anybody that's not your business that you're going to give those workloads to. That is public cloud. And that's a variety of cloud service providers out there. And providers have different offerings for, again, different use cases. And then where we see a lot of organizations thinking about or going to is the concept of hybrid or multi-cloud, right? This is what we just talked about, where I've got maybe 12 different business applications in my organization, and I may be hosting those in different ways. Some might be software as a service applications. Some may be local if I'm using like hand scanners for inventory management or warehouse management. I'll probably have some infrastructure in my warehouse to make sure that that still works.
I've got a cool example for this I can give you. So we have an organization that typically they're 9 users and they have X load that they have, right? And that's pretty small. But then for 9 months of the year, they go to 120 users and then they go back on the, right? So they have this massive swing back and forth. So if in the cloud, if you were to, the best way to save money is to commit. And by that is like you get the lower pricing on a lot of these things if you've committed. So what we do for them is we have 2 different times. We have a committed load that's there all year long. It doesn't change. And they get that for cheaper. And then when they're ready to ramp up for their program they run, we get the month-to-month add-ons that basically expand our load. We do their work. They get, we done. We get to tear it back down and we go down in price. And that, imagine if you were doing that traditionally. You don't have to have the mega load servers all the time, just sitting there getting older, needing to be maintained and taken care of. Whereas with the cloud and the little kind of hybrid patch we don't have that. We have our servers that never go away, and then we have the servers that come and go based on the time of year. And it really is working well for them. And depending on how many contracts they sell, we can even get bigger, we can get a little bit smaller. It totally can fit their business, and we fit the servers to them instead of buying a server the other way, right? Just buying the server for the biggest load. So it works out well.
No, that's a great use case. I think for our next slide here, which is really around use cases, right? That speaks to business agility. How do I avoid having to buy hardware, right? Who can predict what's going to happen in the next 12 to 18 months?
Yeah.
If you can do that, I'd love to talk to you about lottery ticket numbers. The bottom line is, right, I think a lot of us are still trying to figure out what this next evolution of business is going to look like, right? Core businesses probably won't change that much, but how do we interact with customers? How do we connect with our end users? How do we connect with partners or folks that we work with in our supply chain? All of that speaks to business agility, right? And cloud offers organizations a great way to immediately become very, very agile, which is a fancy way of saying I'm not going to pay for a whole lot of infrastructure or servers or hardware that may be sitting in a closet collecting dust because I'm not fully utilizing it, right? Who wants to spend money for stuff I'm not using? And that's one of the key use cases here. That speaks to the cloud first, right? Get out of buy, build, own, operate, manage on premise or physically. Increase my business agility, right? My business may grow, it may scale, it may shrink.
It may close its office.
Right? There's a whole lot of different things that could happen to our business. How do I support all of those unknown evolutions that could be happening to me without having to potentially throw away capital?
I'm glad that you're saying it like that, Jeremy, because that's why you guys are here, right? We've been talking about it in our previous webinars about that this is the time to be making flexible decisions. That agile word that you keep saying is that every decision that you need to be making needs to give you some flex room in there, because we don't exactly know what this is all going to look like. And so we're thankful that you guys are here to talk to us about that, because that's literally why we're in this room.
What we know is it's going to look different.
Yeah.
And
exactly.
What makes you the most prepared to be different and flexible, and yeah, for sure.
And that really speaks to the next one. I'm not going to get all CPA-ish on you guys, but one of the biggest challenges, right? We think about the competition in the industry, right? How do we become more competitive, right? Reduce costs, or make sure that our investments are giving us the maximum return. To take it a little bit deeper, right? I want to host my application somewhere else. I don't want to worry about all the cost complexity, right? I don't want to have a staff of half a dozen IT folks. Well, Whit and Sarah can help you out with that as well, but I don't want to have a lot of that complexity where I have to sit here and go through a long, drawn out process to launch a new business service or hit a new target market. Application delivery. I don't think any of you are on the call or ISVs, right, or the folks that write applications, but cloud is a great platform on which application delivery companies use or consume to deliver their applications to end users, right? Salesforce is in a Salesforce cloud, as an example, right? QuickBooks has their own cloud for QuickBooks as a service. A lot of examples there. Continuity, right? We think about coming up. Thankfully in Texas we're a little bit less hit by this, but hurricane season's coming, right? If I'm in South Florida, I'm probably thinking about my insurance coverage and making sure I've got all my ducks in a row just in case. Continuity is a real thing, right? If I have stuff in my building, I own the responsibility for that, right? I own the risk for that. If I have it in somebody else's building, they own the risk for that. And guess what? They're going to give me an insurance policy, and I can claim that insurance policy if they ever don't live up to it. So key things to think about, right? And last but not least, right, we talked about this already, scale and agility. Scale is not just growth. Scale could be reduction, right? If I'm a seasonal business, if I'm retail, if I do a lot of work maybe for tax season, I'm a CPA or in that field, if I'm retail, right, I'm going to scale up during all the holiday seasons. But I'm going to scale right back down again afterwards because I don't need to spend that money if my business doesn't warrant it. 4 key areas for cloud use. There's a number of them out there. These are some of the larger ones. So at the end of the day, I think the real question though is why should I care, right? Outside, I love to come to these webinars. What really, what's it going to mean for me as a business owner, right? One, I'm going to improve my ability to manage risk and manage cost of operations, right? I want to drop more of my top line revenue to the bottom line. And by doing so, I want to outsource a lot of that cost that comes under our GM line, if you will. I want to throw a lot of that cost to somebody else. I want somebody else to do that work for me, so I don't have to maintain the cost, complexity, and delays. I just want to consume a service, right? Just like plugging a light switch or a plug into an outlet, right? I want the light to go on. I don't want to have to worry about how the electricity gets created. I don't want to have to worry about how it gets delivered. I don't have to worry about all that. I just want the light to go on.
Yeah, I kind of feel like one hidden thing that people don't realize is like, hosting stuff on site, hosting it on premise, you might have an IT guy, right? And he's there to support you, and your server goes down, his cell phone rings, he takes a look at the server, right? A guy. But working with organizations like this, there's teams of guys. There's teams of guys that are fixing it before it happens, stuff that you could never afford on the micro scale that you have. But when you join into the cloud, you get that scale. You get, like, there's a guy dedicated to managing the storage. There's a guy dedicated to managing the network, a guy dedicated, not a guy, there's multiple guys. But IT is more than a computer. It's broken up into sections. You have expertises, and you get that with all these. With one of the outcomes is big for me is that you get that expertise in all those fields, making sure your workload works as good as possible. And that's where like some of the hidden benefits that people just don't think about. They don't think about the back end of all that, the technical expertise you get. So yeah.
The other issue I think that's understated in a lot of cases, although it's starting to get some insight now, right? One of the biggest things that we saw from a threat landscape is a dramatic increase in social hacking from a security aspect, right? You got a whole bunch of folks working from home, probably not on the most secure device, probably not in the most secure connection. And they're coming into your corporate network. They're coming into your environment, and they have access into your data, into your information. Guess who's the prime target and the weakest link in that process, right? So there has been a massive influx of social engineering hacks designed to penetrate organization networks. So security is another piece, right? Again, think about it from managing risk. If all of that stuff is in your building, you manage that risk. And yeah, maybe you're advanced and you've got some cyber liability contracts, or you've got some good security solutions in place, but you're still managing that risk versus giving it to somebody else. Now they have to manage that risk, and they have to put the security operations center in place and the security intelligence and event management systems in place. And they have to be the ones that staff that 24/7, 365 to make sure that there's always eyes on. If anything should happen, that there's immediate response, right? Because day zero attacks are what we always read about in the paper. So a couple different outcomes here. Those two are probably the biggest outcomes that we've seen that have the biggest payback, but it's avoiding risk, and it's avoiding unnecessary cost, and unnecessary operational delay. All right, security and continuity. Leveraging on that, avoiding risk, right? This is a report. It was back from early 2020. This is done by Alliance. They serve the industry for insurance, cyber insurance, and similar. So they do a lot of thought leadership around where the threat landscape is moving, where the risks are, and help insurance organizations better posture and calculate and understand what their exposure is when they issue things like a business insurance policy or cyber liability policy, etc. If you look at the cause of issues, you'll see 55% of those issues are cyber incidents, right? So that is certainly one of the, if not the largest, one of the largest and most significant concerns that are facing today's businesses. Now, it's a little bit different than if you're Home Depot or you're someone like that has has the insurance policies in place, has teams on place to handle the stuff. But a lot of our SMB organizations don't have those resources, don't have that capability, right? And disruptions cause impact. I think that talks to our next slide here. Disruptions cause impact, right? If we think about what causes our disruptions, the number one cause of disruption has been human error, right? And human error, to be clear, that's just not somebody being malicious. It's not somebody knowing what they're doing. It's also cyber security around those social hacks, right? It's somebody, whether it's themselves or somebody else, getting somebody to do something they shouldn't. Whether
put their password in, click on this link.
Exactly, exactly, right? Number one cause of unplanned downtime. Now, look, I'm not going to spout any Gartner statistics about cost of downtime, right? That number is somewhat meaningless, but we all know, right? If our business goes down and we can't serve our customers, what happens, right? There's always somebody else or somebody else's down the road that are more than happy to take over that customer base. So more so now than ever, especially in this economy, we can't afford to have missteps. We can't afford to have disruption. So if we can limit that one key factor, that is going to be huge for us, right? Organizations that had a DR or backup plan in place survived a ransomware attack. You all have heard about ransomware, I'm sure, right? You've all seen myriads of scary headlines everywhere from small SMB organizations to government environments to police stations to other more mature organizations. All of them have been hit with ransomware. How can you best prevent ransomware? Well, one of the best preventions is a recovery strategy. You're never going to be 100% protected, but you can make sure that you're able to recover and be unaffected if you were impacted. Does that make sense, team?
Yeah.
All right. So we talked about security continuity, right? We think about our business services in a couple different ways. So think about the pain, right? What happens if your payroll system goes down and it's Friday afternoon? What happens if your billing system goes down and it's the end of the month or the beginning of the month? What happens if those types of what we consider to be business critical systems go down? What's the impact? What's the pain? What does that do to your business? What does that do to your ability to serve your customers? What does that do to your ability to collect revenue and recognize revenue? What does that do to your ability to make sure that your employees that you're paying are productive and able to do the job you're paying them for, right? Those are good examples of business critical applications. And those are protected in a different way than business important, right? Think about things like maybe I run reports every week. Maybe I do some other manual or semi-manual APAR GL stuff. Maybe I'm doing some inventory management or ordering or similar, right? It's not critical. It's not going to bring my business to a crushing halt, but it's still important to my business. I don't want to certainly redo all that information, right? That's a good example of business important, where I'm going to protect those a little bit cheaper with a little bit longer period of recovery. But what I'm doing is I'm tiering what I'm willing to pay to the impact of that application or that service to my company, right? I'm willing to pay more if that's going to bring me to my knees from an organization perspective. Versus if I just want to keep data that's on a file server somewhere in case I might ever need it in the future, I don't want to pay a whole lot, right? I want to know that I'm protected. I want to know I'm secure. I want to know that my information is safe and can be retrieved no matter what happens, but I don't want to pay a whole lot for it. So that's the concept really of approaching security and continuity from a tiered perspective, right? If I approach everything with one solution, I guarantee you that you are either overpaying or underprotecting, depending on what solution you choose. And both of those are bad for your business. So
it gets tricky I think in the small to mid, because a lot of times their applications are so blended to where they don't have the ability to pick or choose how they protect it, right? Like maybe they have an archive of data where they put the old stuff, maybe, right? But I think it's reasonable to say in your process, you set up that ability. Like, what data do we not need? This. Okay, let's draw a line and get that put over here because it saves us money. In a lot of cases, I also say it saves you risk because that data, i.e., could be patient data. And if it's not with the normal herd, that data is not exposed, right? So there's additional benefits to it too. But it is trickier in the small business. You definitely have to really think about your data flow and your workflow and how you can split the data up to help make this process easier. So, yeah.
Yeah, so this is, again, avoid underpaying, avoid underprotecting, or sorry, overpaying or underprotecting your information, right?
A lot of times, sorry to interrupt you on this thought. A lot of times it's making sure you have a conversation with whoever's helping you with their IT to what is the most important. We have, I don't know, my career, the biggest times I've gotten is like people just do things. They'll just buy something, install it. It's now connected, and a month later it's down and the sky is ending and they installed it on my PC. Well, come on, man. Come on. You gotta give us, we can't help you if we don't communicate. So it's a meeting. It's having meetings, talking about your workflow, talking about what's important. It's not just going to automatically be protected. So
100%, Whit, I agree. And this is a business conversation, folks. This is not a technical conversation, right? There's no bells and blinky lights here. This is just, how does your business operate? How do you collect money? How do you service your customers, right? And how do we protect that? That's the ultimate strategy here. One thing I'll leave you on this slide with is make sure we think about dependencies, right? If this system here needs this system over here to function, and I'm only protecting this system, guess what? I'm still down. So we have to think about how those dependencies work as well. And that's something, again, with Sarah and their organization can certainly help drive some of that thought leadership.
So many people migrate everything in the cloud and have one internet connection. I'm like, so you're spending $20,000 a month and you're not getting, you don't have a backup internet connection.
Yeah,
one point and it's the internet too. So some guy with the shovel is just singing along and you go down, right? It's like, come on. It's like, you got to think about that whole process. It's more than just moving it, right? So anyway, yeah.
Yep, 100%. All right. Yeah, this is a build. One of the things that we want to talk about here, and if you wouldn't mind, just hit like forward a couple times so we get all the text on the screen. Thank you, sir. One of the things we talk about is now we've got our information right in the cloud. Let's say we're there, right? How do I connect, Joe Public and Fran Private from their houses into my environment? How do I do that safely? How do I do that securely? And how do I do that to make sure that my business isn't impacted from maybe Joe Public's laptop he used to go on the internet after work and download some stuff and got a virus or got some malware, and now the next time he plugs into the VPN, guess what's on my network, right? How do
we talked a lot about this? Yeah.
Yep.
And there's a couple different ways, folks, that we can do that, right? The basic way is to use an RDS or remote desktop, right? It takes and only presents what's on your screen and only transmits what you type into the keyboard and click on the mouse to and from the data center, right? It doesn't actually bring any information to your laptops from your remote users, and it doesn't actually pull information from the laptops into the environment. So look at that as really a brick wall that you can see through. You're seeing into the data center, you're being able to use those environments. but you're not exposing your network or your environment to what may be on those desktops or laptops, right? They're uncontrolled. They're in somebody's house. We don't know what's on them. We don't know if they're healthy. The steps here on the right are what we call zero trust, right? And that is a common term that you'll be hearing about if you haven't already in the industry for the type of business that we're in today. We are in essentially a zero trust model. What does that mean? It means that I'm not going to trust, and let's say Whit's coming into my environment, right? I'm not going to trust that Whit is Whit. I'm going to make him prove it to me. And I want him to prove it to me because I want him to make sure that it's not somebody else that got access to Whit's credentials. I want to make sure it's not somebody that got access to Whit's laptop if he was traveling in New York City and left it in the back of a taxi cab. I want to make sure that it's not somebody that is spoofing Whit based on his social media profile or something else, right? I want to actually make sure that who I am giving access to is who in fact they are. And I also want to make sure that the device they're coming in on is secure, it's healthy, it's safe, and I've got appropriate controls in place to make sure that environment is not introducing malware or something negative into my my cloud environment. So a lot of scary words on the right side of the screen, but at the end of the day, zero trust essentially means trust no one and trust nothing. Make sure that everybody is validating, right? Two-factor authentication. Think about when you log into your banking app, right? Maybe they're looking for a challenge phrase. Maybe they send you a text message with an authorization code. Maybe they make you use Face ID on an iPhone or something to make sure that you are who you say you are. These are examples of that trust no one, trust nothing mentality. Something else that Whit and Sarah and the team can help you with is having this type of an access profile for your data, for your information, so that you can safely enable your end users, your employees to come in, do what they have to do, be productive, but do so in a way that doesn't introduce risk into your company. Any questions? I know this is somewhat of an abstract thought, but and then I will say as a shameless marketing preamble for Ottava, early next year, Q2, we are launching our own remote desktop service. This is built on VMware, and it includes a robust all-in security wrapping, zero trust security wrapping around a remote desktop session that connects users to information that is in the cloud, but in a way that is consistent to their user experience on a laptop or on a device, right? So think about when you're on a laptop, right? Now you go onto an iPad or something else, right? You have a different user experience. The screens look a little different, right? We want to give you that same user experience across whatever device you're on. That way, it just minimizes the complexity for your productivity workers, for your employees, right? Employees don't like change. So
yeah, so we kind of
so
talked about this. This is like remote desktop enhanced, like version 2.0, right? Like
correct.
It's like more isolated, more control, and also, a little more flexible, a little more secure. So it's definitely remote desktop enhanced level 2, whatever you want to call it, turbocharged. But yeah.
It also gives organizations, like going back to the concept of agility, it gives organizations a really cool way to just quickly scale up and scale down, right? If you're using temp folks, if you've got seasonal workers, if you've got, God forbid, you have a disaster or somewhat a similar incident, right? Somebody's laptop doesn't work. Guess what? Go to a store, buy a cheap Android tablet, and now you're back up and running.
Yeah, that's why we love it. Is like the devices, they leave the conversation.
Yeah.
You just whatever you got, and honestly, we can reload them with a dumb OS that's just locked down and nothing can happen. And that whole trust no one, zero trust. That's a perfect way to do it, because now the only thing allowed to connect is dumb things or registered thin terminals. So now you've added another layer on top of your two-factor, and it's all about the layers, right? Any layer you can add, the better. So
you got it. So team, I try not to kill you with death by PowerPoint. I'm sure you've been through enough of it already. But any thoughts, any questions here?
We don't have any in the queue.
No.
Doing
I answered
pretty
one
good.
earlier for Lisa. I bet she had to go because she had to go get her kid or something at the end of the day. But yeah, anybody? It's all quiet.
I know it is so quiet today.
I do appreciate you guys bringing some more detailed content around the cloud and about how they use it to empower businesses and be flexible. It was cool having you.
Yeah, and for your partnership, allowing us to offer this to our customers so that they can get more agile, more flexible.
I got to go some stretching. I'm not very flexible at all.
Love it. Well, I appreciate the invite. Pleasure speaking with you all. Have a great day.
Yeah, Jeremy.
So
Thanks.
just so you guys know, the next one is October 15th, which is the third Thursday of every month. And so we haven't decided what we're going to talk on. I got an inkling, but we're not ready to put it out there yet. So,
well, what do you got?
Pay attention to my emails. I don't know. All right.
Bravo.
Well, thanks, guys.
Thanks, guys. Have a good afternoon.
Thanks, guys.
Bye.
Mhm.